For example, I recently admitted to you that I made some enormous changes from August of last year. Had I brought the old me with me to my new environment, to my new set of friends and my new colleagues, I would be netting the same results that I was netting before. I was forced to look at myself and say, okay, I'm going to lose this part about me, this part about me, this part about me, and I'm going to grow in these particular ways so that I can net the results that I want to go after. So I had to rebrand the idea. I had to lose old sides of me that were not necessary, that did not serve me, and I had to start a whole new recipe for who I wanted to be now. Because based on what I had drawn out and described, that particular person had particular habits. That particular person saw the world in a very particular way. And that's what I went ahead and did.
So here's the big question. How do everyday people like us who didn't grow up wealthy and were not taught how to be wealthy in school, how are we supposed to learn to think, invest, and grow wealth like the top 1% without compromising our ethics and our values? My name is Jeremy Whaley. That was my big question. This podcast will give you the answers. You're listening to Think Rich Radio. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Think Rich Radio. I'm your host, Jeremy Whaley, with my co-host, Nelson Bran. Episode number 15. It's so awesome to be here. What a great day. And just before we hit record here, Nelson and I were talking about personal branding, and we said, that's it. That's what we need to do this episode on. So, Nelson, I love 2026. I love the transition. In the last episode, we were talking about how we're going from fourth turning to the first turning. We're setting these new seeds in place. And one of the things that is really changing right now, no longer are people an employee of a corporation. No longer are they the identity of their education. You know, oh, I went to school to be a marketer. I'm a marketer. No, you are a sovereign individual. You are a Nelson. I am a Jeremy. And what we're going to see over the next 10 years is every individual starts to build their personal brand as their calling card, as opposed to this nebulous, business. I was trained to be X. That's who I am. I think what's so cool about this transition is we've opened up identity in a way that has never been opened up before.
We can no longer identify with whatever our previous job title was, Jeremy. We can't fall back on that. Right now we're in a weird moment. Let's talk about real estate for one moment. So I have friends who are realtors, and they're going through a very tough time if they're into the buying and selling of homes exclusively in real estate for the residential marketplace. If they, on the other hand, are also doing property management and rentals, they're doing just fine. If they're also doing commercial leasing spaces, they're also doing just fine. So it depends on where you're going, right? But the people who decide to stay into the residential real estate market, they're really suffering because they keep waiting for it to change to the way that it was. And that's not going to happen anymore, Jeremy. Yesterday for this particular industry is going to stay in yesterday. For a lot of industries, it's going to stay in yesterday. So it forces us to do some work, to develop ourselves, and to modify ourselves into what the new environment requires. That's rebranding oneself, right?
It is. I'm reminded, we're pretty similar in age. I'm reminded of a book that came out in the late 90s, early 2000 called Who Moved My Cheese? Did you ever see that book?
I did.
And it was the story of these two mice, or Who Moved the Cheese, whatever. But it was the story of these two mice, him and Haw, and every day they went the same path and they got the same cheese. And then one day the cheese was gone. And they kept going back, and every day the cheese was gone. And they're like, oh no, where'd the cheese go? And then after, they start to become skinny mice and, they're impoverished because they can't find cheese. One of them says, well, what if we go looking for more cheese? But the other one's like, no, this is where the cheese is. But it's such a great little story. It's a very tiny book. I forgot the guy's name who wrote it. Do you remember his name?
I do not.
Okay, I don't either. I want to say it's either Ken Blanchard or Spencer or something. I forget. But anyway, it was a great book. It's a great metaphor, great story. A lot of people, go back and read it or read the notes on it. But that's really what you're talking about. The cheese has moved. Society's cheese has moved. We're going for fourth turning to first turning. The cheese is gone, folks. But it doesn't mean that there's not better cheese somewhere else.
I'll tell you, so people were doing online businesses pretty brilliantly recently. Also, recently, you and I talked about storage facility centers, how people were building those all across America and doing very well on those, right? Leasing out space for storage. I don't know if those are doing as well as they were doing 5 years ago, right? So we need to stay up on top of the new trends and the new fads in order to imitate our environment, in order to go to what is hot or what is good right now, which is one of the reasons that you and I are doing this right now, to bring forth projects that are worthwhile, that right now are making money today, new ideas, new methodologies, and new skill sets that people are going to use to modify into this new marketplace, and an attempt to equip them not just with skill sets, but a belief system where they can look in the mirror and say, you deserve this, you can make the change, and let's move forward and evolve with this new evolution of everything. So all of that requires rebranding. We can't bring, for example, I recently admitted to you that I made some enormous changes from August of last year. Had I brought the old me with me to my new environment, to my new set of friends and my new colleagues, I would be netting the same results that I was netting before. I was forced to look at myself and say, okay, I'm going to lose this part about me, this part about me, this part about me, and I'm going to grow in these particular ways so that I can net the results that I want to go after. So I had to rebrand the idea. I had to lose old sides of me that were not necessary, that did not serve me, and I had to start a whole new recipe for who I wanted to be now. Because based on what I had drawn out and described, that particular person had particular habits. That particular person saw the world in a very particular way. And that's what I went ahead and did.
I love that, because what you just described, I'm going to make a statement about human psychology. There's not a stronger force in the human mind than the need to stay consistent with how one sees themselves. What you had the courage to do is to look at how you see yourself and be willing to change that. What most people do is they look at themselves and they say, I'm not adventurous, therefore they can never experience adventure. Or they say, I need more certainty in my life. And they have a certain impression of how they are. And we'll hear people say it all the time. Oh, I'm just that way. Well, why? Like, do you have to be that way? I love what you just described in your own story. You took the time to sit down, do self-reflection, and say, I want this part of me to be different. And I've done that at various seasons of my life. I probably need to go through another purge and get rid of some other weird habits that I've picked up over the last however many years. But I absolutely love that. And I think if our listeners would be humble enough to do that, instead of saying, this is how I am, just sit down and say, okay, this is how I am, but is that how I want to be? Do I need to be that way? Which part of me could I change and maybe open up more opportunities in my life?
Jeremy, we defend parts of ourselves not knowingly. We're not, we tend to behave in a default type of way by things that we learned when we were younger. And we're not conscious. We don't act consciously. We don't speak consciously. And because of that, we're on autopilot. And then we net results that we're not content with. So if we want to have a particular quality of life, we design it, because a certain person, a certain type of person would live and experience that particular quality of life. So we have to modify ourselves first. The environment only changes after we change ourselves. So you and I right now are talking about branding ourselves. I'm interpreting branding as going ahead and picking out the best parts about us that serve us and continuing in those directions, and then looking at the ones that do not serve us and canceling those out. And that might mean breaking friendships, breaking business relationships, breaking all kinds of relationships in order to go into a whole new direction. So, but we have to have the courage to say, you know what? I'm not getting the quality of life that I want. Am I living to my highest standards? And if I'm not, what do I need to do about it? So, yeah, it takes that.
I really, really love that. So I know what I would say to the answer to this question I'm going to ask you, but I'm curious, Nelson, if somebody's sitting here at home or wherever they're listening and they say, yeah, but Nelson, how do I do that? What is your process? People are so ingrained with who we are how am I supposed to break the habit of being who I am and become somebody different? What do you say to that?
It's so much easier than anyone might imagine. So much easier. Easier, but not simple. Is that right? So we have to act. We can't, Jeremy, if I were to try to pray away my bad habits or pray away my whatever it is that I'm doing that isn't good for me, it's never going to come. If I want to pray for a better tomorrow, it's not going to come. I have to act in that direction. I'm not saying prayer doesn't work. It does. I think prayer is beautiful and we all pray. I'm just saying that prayer without action doesn't work. And so, but going back to your question, how does one change? You see, I have this bias. You know that I write everything down. So I'm able to go back and cross out some of the foolish things I write, some of the things that I think are true. So I can go back and look at last week or last month or last year at what I wrote. And I can look in the mirror and say, wow, what a fool. Holy moly, I can't believe that I believed that. And so I'm able to evolve and continue evolving because of that. I think we need to write it down. If we don't, how can we take the complexity of who we are and really understand ourselves? Because we're so many different facets. We're so complex. So that's when we write things down. And for the first time, we realize there's an idea about myself that isn't true. I'm not that. I'm deciding to be that. I'm wearing that like a warm blanket because I've learned to be comforted by those bad habits or by those negative impressions of myself, but they're not true. You write them down on paper and go, you know what, this is stupid. This is just plain dumb. I can't believe I brought this with me wherever I've gone, from relationship to relationship, from partnership to partnership, whatever it may be. It just isn't true. And if, for example, if I were to say to you, I'm just naturally fat. And if you were to say to me, well, Nelson, those cupcakes you eat every evening at 10 p.m., that's not helping. I'm going to say, that's just me. And you're going to say to me, no, Nelson, you're acting in that way and you're reinforcing that behavior. And then you're going to say to me, Nelson, a guy that's skinny practices skinny. A guy that runs long distances practices running. Whatever we practice, we practice. If I tell you, you know what, I really suck at math. You're going to say to me, well, Nelson, how much time have you spent on it? And I'm going to say, probably none. So our actions dictate where we're going to end up.
Yeah, and I love what you just said there. You know, if a person's struggling with their weight and they make the excuse, oh, I'm just big boned, I'm just overweight. What we're doing is we're using softeners to justify who we are. In my life, most people wouldn't know it today, but once upon a time, I was a great athlete. And I was a really great baseball player through high school. I could have gone and played college baseball. Instead, when I was a senior in high school, I decided I was going to become a musician. And what I didn't realize happened at the time is I had a complete identity shift. So fast forward from my senior year in high school to the end of my freshman year in college, and every habit, everything that I had done was suddenly gone. And instead, what I didn't realize was happening is I was transitioning into an identity of a musician who stopped looking at any sports, who didn't go to any baseball games, who didn't go to anything other than just being obsessed with the practice room. And I was doing my schooling and getting my music degree. And before you knew it, guess what? I started to take on the body shape of a musician who didn't exercise, who was getting fat. And I told myself the stories. And when I see people that were out running, I would be like, why are they doing that? Forgetting that literally just 2 or 3 years before, that was me. And then fast forward when my kids, doesn't matter when it happened, but it was years later that I had a trigger. And I was like, you know, I'm going to start going to the gym. And I went to the gym and I re-triggered in my body a different identity. And I actually started remembering 20 plus years before. And before I knew it, it was like I just recalled a totally different identity. And it was such a unique experience in my life because I have this before transition where I was like, wow, I can look back and see how I shifted identity and also how quickly I was able to shift back and let go of something that wasn't serving me. And I'm only saying that to say this: we tell ourselves a story of who we are, and then we become that thing. So if somebody wants to be someone different, we literally just say, I'm someone different. And it can happen that fast. The words have power. Yes, we write it down. Yes, we change our behavior, but we don't use softeners. If somebody says, I don't want to be an alcoholic anymore, great, don't. Literally, oh, well, you don't understand. I'm addicted. No, you keep saying the pattern, I'm an alcoholic. Let's change it. I'm a recovering alcoholic. No. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not the kind of person who consumes alcohol. And if somebody changes the language that extreme and then starts doing the things that people who don't drink alcohol do, they miraculously, their body detoxes and they stop having the same pattern. And I'm just using alcohol, but you could say it for anything that we want to say it for. So anyway, a little bit of a tangent there, but that's essentially what you described that you did in August.
And all of us do it, brother. And listen, we're all work in progress, every single one of us. I have a lot of habits that I'm still working on. We're all a project in motion. I've noticed, though, that we will change only after we re-identify it as a particular type of person. And so the moment the person says, I'm a successful person who rises early or works late into the night or works above and beyond a standard job and works in the evenings or works on the weekends or does whatever it takes to accomplish a particular goal or go after a certain desire. And it can be related to money or to a relationship or to weight or to whatever. It's not until we identify who it is that we're going to be and then suddenly we start acting like that person. So we need the big enough whys before we start acting in that direction. And if we don't act in a direction that we covet, it means we're not ready. It means we haven't come to that conclusion of, oh, that's who I am. We must become that first. And the moment we do, Jeremy, our outer world begins to reflect it back to us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I absolutely love that. So let's give our audience one thing that they can do. And I'm going to start. First thing that you can do is pick a habit of a future version of yourself. Look at somebody that you say, I want to be like that. Look at one of their habits, whatever that might be. And I'm going to give people an idea. It's probably going to look like personal development. Everybody I know who is successful at anything in life is obsessed with personal development. So that's a perfect reason to go to Delta Chain Labs or over to Trade Maestro or keep listening to our Think Rich Radio, because that's what we're doing. We're helping give you new thoughts and new ideas. And if that's all you do every day is listen to Think Rich Radio, which everybody should do it, you should like and subscribe and listen. If that's all you do, that's a great habit. And if you do that for the next 21 days, it's going to become second nature to you. And Nelson and I are going to keep pumping these out so you can keep listening to them. Nelson, what do you want to add?
I'll tell you, Jeremy, I'm always personal developing myself. I'm always looking in the mirror. I'm always self-diagnosing. I'm always reading. It's something that we must do, Jeremy. I once had someone say to me, why would you spend so much time on books? Why would you go to so many seminars? Why do you watch podcasts and take notes? Or why do you watch Zooms? What are you doing? How can you make money doing that? This person related time invested in personal development as a non-monetary action. And this person didn't understand that we have to develop ourselves in order to come out to the real world and have something of value to provide the world. Behind closed doors, you know who's working on themselves and on a project and so forth, based on what they say when they're outside, based on what kind of value they say every time they open their mouth. Based on what, are they multilingual? Where have they been? Tell me your skill sets. What do you know how to do? Do you have projects? Have you started a company? Whatever it is, you can tell the person who behind the scenes has focused on building an idea. So the personal development thing is something, Jeremy, that I invite every one of us to do. It's something we do avidly, and that's the way that we become shinier when we're outside in public.
When I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad for the first time, one of the biggest lessons I took from the book, Robert Kiyosaki said that he and his wife, they just planned that they would always do at least 2 seminars a year. And I took that to heart. And when I met my wife, she was a fan of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We did that. We have done that from the beginning of our marriage. And, I guess since COVID, we've not done as much of that. There hasn't been the same quality of events going on that there was before, but there have been years literally years where every month we were doing seminars every month, sometimes a week long at a time. And those events did more to shape us and to put us in a different direction than anything I can ever describe. So that's what I want to end on here. Whether you come to trademaestro.com, whether you go to deltachainlabs.com, both of them, or you go somewhere else, the beautiful thing about 2026 is you have more access to great ideas and great personal development than any time in world history. So dig into podcasts, dig into great ideas wherever they come from. Go to personal development things. If you say, hey, I want to get into real estate, go to the real estate seminars. You want to learn how to trade? Come to Trade Maestro. Go to trading seminars. You want to learn about crypto and AI and all this stuff? Go where people are teaching it. It's not going to happen by osmosis. You have to go get it. But when you step in those environments, every time you come out on the other side, it's not about the $500 or $1,000 or $1,500 ticket to get in. It's about the person you become that maybe you don't even see the result for 10 months or 12 months or a year or 2, 3 years down the road. But it's about the transition. That's my parting shot.
Before you close this up, ladies and gentlemen, know that Jeremy and I will be coming to a town near you at some point. We will have live events at some point. We'll be the ones hosting seminars and inviting you to come hear us and see us as we say some of the philosophy we've already been imparting during these last 15 episodes. But on top of that, offer opportunities in business, in AI, in bots, and a variety of things that we want to bring to all of you as we transition into this new decentralized world.
Way to plant a seed, Nelson.
That's me.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Like and subscribe. Follow if you haven't done so already. Share with your friends, and we'll see everybody tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.
Cheers.